Montgomery's tactics were finally working, and by November the 4th, the German front had been pierced, forcing Rommel's armies into retreat with Monty's 8th Army in hot pursuit. Further west, in French North Africa, Morocco and Algeria, large Anglo-American invasion forces under the command of General Dwight D. Eisenhower were landing as part of the coordinated and highly secret Operation Torch, which called for this force to advance eastwards along the coast to Tunis and eventually link up with Monty's westward advancing 8th Army, in the hope of trapping Rommel's force. 3 Squadron advanced to landing ground 106 at Daba, only hours after the Luftwaffe had fled, leaving behind aircraft, equipment and personal effects. Over the next few weeks, however, heavy rains restricted air support, but the 8th Army continued to rout the retreating German forces, pushing them back to Tobruk by the 13th. Rommel had little more than 60 tanks, 43 serviceable Bf-109s, and an estimated combined army of 25,000 Italian and 10,000 Germans left to fight almost 600 British tanks, 1,000 heavy guns, and 7 divisions of infantry, over 100,000 men. The 8th Army continued to chase Rommel's troops westward along the coast of North Africa, and 3 Squadron relocating behind the advance, capturing some 109s along the way, including a new Bf-109 G2.
When we say we captured it, the Germans who had just left this particular aerodrome couldn't take it with them. Either they didn't have a pilot to fly it or anything else, because that's the last thing they wanted, because this particular 109, Messerschmitt 109G, was the latest of their aircraft, and it was a really good aircraft. And anyway, our engineering officer, Ken McRae, he sighted it first, and he raced over with the truck with some of the guys in, and they were looking at it, and they said, right, we're keeping, this is 3 Squadrons playing this one, no one's having this. And then a couple of army officers turned up, and they said, we're intelligence officers, we're commandeering this aircraft. And Ken said, no bloody fear, this is our aircraft and we're keeping it.
And I said, what do you do with that aircraft? I said, I'm taking it back to the squadron to fly it. You can't have what we wanted. I said, you bloody can't have it, I've got it. So they argued the toss for a while, and I said, I will get it anyway. And then they said, do you mind if we have a look at the tags on it? I said, take what you want from it, but don't damage the aircraft. So they worked around for half an hour. Suddenly one bloke sung out, it's a G2. Good. I didn't know there was any G2s there. And I said, all the more reason for me to take it, so the pilot, see how can fly it and evaluate it. All right. So they took off, and the last words they said, we'll get it. And I said to him, not before we fly it, you won't. So I thought these barmaids might come back with a lot of troops. So when Rex came back, we parked the thing right against the fuselage so that if they tried to take me asleep, they wouldn't be able to move it. And we slept under the main planes. He was on one, I was on the ground. And morning came, the boys came early, we towed it back, and Bobby was thrilled to see a brand new aircraft, but it didn't have a canopy. So I had to go back to Mercer Mattu and pick up a canopy and put the canopy on where the boys had checked it over and run it up. Bobby flew it, no difference to him, zoom down he goes and up and does all the kinds of things with it. He came back and landed and he said, well, we should get some good flying out of this. I'd like to take it home for the RAAF. Anyway, after flying for a week, various bods, but mostly him, a signal came. This aircraft had to go back to the Delta for evaluation. He said, we take no notice of that. And a week after, we do not request, we direct. So he said, I got to prang the ruddy thing on the way back, and he nearly did. He got halfway down there, was escorted by a couple of kiddies, so the aircraft didn't shoot him down. And he landed on a Yankee place to refuel and have a feed. And the Yanks had never seen one. They were all over the aircraft and what they thought was fantastic. He said, wait till you see me take off and do a roll on the climb. So when he takes off, zoomed down to the end, held her back, then up she went like a ruddy rocket, zoomed on the climb and the canopy came off. Oh, he said, I nearly pranked it. The ruddy dust came up in my face, but I got straightened out okay, and I thought, what did I do wrong that the ruddy canopy came off? Anyway, he got it down there, and we heard that 3 months after they pranked it when they lost the canopy. So that was 109 G2.
By the 19th of November, Benghazi was in Allied hands, but heavy rain started on the 20th, forcing a lull in air operations. The squadron then occupied the airfield at Marble Arch, which was covered with mines and booby traps, one killing 5 of the squadron's leading air craftsmen and seriously injuring 3 others.
All these airstrips, after being vacated by the enemy, were mined, and the most dangerous mine was a little 3-pointer mine just below the surface, which if you trod on it or if you ran over it with a vehicle, a small explosion would occur, and a container about the size of a jam tin would bounce out to about truck height, and then explode, and the shrapnel would then mow down personnel. At Marble Arch we had a most unfortunate experience in that way. A truck with a lot of our ground crew in ran over one, and the bomb just came up to the level of the back of the truck and exploded right into the back, and I think we lost 5 or 6 people. It was, you expect to lose the pilots, but you don't expect to lose the ground crew.
We were in convoy on this coast road, one of the rare times we were on it, because we'd stayed off it as much as we could. And we were in a convoy, and we couldn't do anything about it. There was trucks behind us and in front of us, and we were just going along, and all of a sudden, about 3 or 4 trucks up in front, this truck hit a mine and bang, and killed 5 of them in the truck. So mines are a very intangible thing. You don't know where they are, and early in the piece they didn't have mine detectors to pick them up. And then, seeing we're on mines, I'll tell you about another mine which was called an S mine. Now these detectors couldn't pick them up, and they had made a detector that could identify them, and they used to bury them in the ground, and they'd have a prod, 3 prods used to come out and just stick just level with the ground. Now, if you tread on it, you can put 30-pound pressure on it, it would go down. Nothing would happen. It's only when you lift your foot off, it would then, the primary charge would go off and bring it up about that high, about 2 foot off the ground, and then the main charge would go. And in the main charge were 370 little cast iron balls in that. And they used to just, once it got 2 foot high, they'd just spray out like that. And they'd kill it, 80 yards, 100 yards. And we, our armoured truck, at one particular aerodrome we were at, called Marble Arch, there was 1,000 mines they dug out of just the runways. And it was so bad with these mines, these S mines, that you weren't game to walk on soil. If there was a truck wheel mark, you'd walk along that wheel mark till it crossed another one, then you'd go down that one, just to be sure that you're not going to tread on a mine, because this armoured truck It was Sea Flight armament. Truck, they pulled up and one chap jumped over the side and killed 5 of them. The blinking S-mine. One chap jumped on the mine and the others were just getting over the side of the truck and killed a lot of them. So these S-mines, cows, I think. I've only known of one chap that did tread on one and got away with it. He was a AIF Army lieutenant. No, I don't think he was AIF. I think he was a British Army lieutenant. He trod on one, but he was an engineer, so he knew all about these, and he realised he'd pushed one down, so he took his foot away, put his hand down, kept the pressure there, and laid flat on his back, knowing that it's got to jump up that high before it goes off. And he finished up with just he had a few wounds on his back, but didn't kill him. But he had the presence of mind to do that. And the only way they could get him out was to get a row of engineers with bayonets, and they'd push him in on an angle like that. To dodge the top of them, they push in on an angle. The mine itself's about that big and about that thick, and they just hit it on the side. That was all right. And then they just dig it up and stand it on top of the ground. And they'd have rows of chaps with these, pushing the bayonets into the ground, putting them on top, and then a truck come along and pick them up. Then they'd destroy them. But so they were dangerous for everybody.
Many were killed or injured by these mines left by retreating enemy forces. Felix recalls other dangers on the ground as well.
I've seen several pilots burnt in their cockpits. Chaps I know, they've crash landed and couldn't get out of their aircraft, and often they might be legs broken at the ankles. And they can't push up to get out. You can't get to them because it's just all fire, and they just burn to death, And those sort of things, they stay with you for the rest of your life often. But certain things hit you more than others, especially if it's a mate. I had one of my mates shot in front of my tent, and accidentally we were fixing up .5 cannons we'd taken out of the aircraft, and we used to put them on a little box outside the tent. We had nothing to work with. It was just we had no workshops or anything like that. We used to work out in the open. It was just sitting on a box, and his mate just pushed the recoiling portions back with the barrel, and it fired off 5 shots. And Don Riley, his little mate of mine, he was just at that exact time he was walking fair distance away in front of the guns, and the shots went through his arm, through his shoulder, through his heart, right up through his head. 5 of them. Every shot hit him because they used to fire very rapid, and so he was killed on the spot. Well, his mate that was working on the gun, he wasn't any good after that. We sent him home, and so those sort of things, and we buried him there and then, and he was just, we got an old prop and put his name and that on it, and when we left, it was just a mound of sand in the desert, and those sort of things you remember.
The squadron was soon hitting the Germans in the Sirte area, scoring a valuable direct hit on 4 88mm guns, regarded by the Germans as their main defence weapon. On the 21st of December, squadron leader Bobby Gibbes led a 6 Kitty Hawk reconnaissance patrol over a German-held airfield called Hun, located 188 miles from Marble Arch. Parked around the airstrip was a mixture of 12 German and Italian aircraft and gliders.
And one particular day, this job on Hun cropped up. Bobby was CO, and the long-range Desert Patrol had found a secret aerodrome, which they knew nothing about, with 109s on, well into the desert, not near the coast. So the 4 aircraft were to go, and 3 squadron were doing the job, and Bobby flew, and Another CO who was replacing him was there, and he took charge of the flight, and two the sergeant pilot and two sergeant pilots. So they chuffed off and kept down below 50 feet and surprised the ruddy people, did a run across them, set aircraft on fire and a lot of damage, and they formed up a mile or so away, and this other bloke said, I won't mention his name, he wanted Bobby to do another run. Bobby said, you never do 2 runs over the same target. First time surprise. Next time it's still a surprise for you. He said, I'll take him down anyway. So Bobby said, well, I'm not going. So he sat up there and watched it all, and they went down, bang, bang, 2 shot down. The other bloke got out of it alive.
In 2 low-level passes, the Kitty Hawks destroyed or damaged most of the grounded aircraft, and on the 3rd pass, hit more of them. But during this last attack, 2 Kitty Hawks were hit by ground fire. One crashed in flames, killing Sergeant Stuka B. The other, flown by pilot officer Rex Bailey, managed to crash land about a mile from the target airfield. After sizing up the area and calling on the 3 remaining pilots to provide air cover, Bobby Gibbes found the closest spot he could land and radioed Bailey to make his way to the spot. After landing, Gibbes threw away his parachute and manually disconnected his half-full petrol drop tank. He took 300 paces and marked out a possible take-off point by tying his handkerchief to a bush. When Bailey arrived, Gibbes sat him in the cockpit seat and climbed in onto his lap.
We were operating from an aerodrome called Marble Arch in Tripolitania. And the Army wanted to know what was happening behind lines at a certain little aerodrome called Hun. It's now known as Hon, H-O-N, but it was H-U-N in those days. It's about 180 miles inland from where Marble Arch, where we took off. So I took a little team of 6 people out to carry out a reconnaissance of this aerodrome. We put a few bombs on just in case. We put on our long-range tanks because instead of just going 180 miles there and back, I wanted to go further into the desert to see if there was anything else happening behind. When we got over, inside of Hom Aerodrome, which is quite a big square aerodrome with trees and things around it, and there were a lot of airplanes parked around the perimeters. And as we had a complete element of surprise, I couldn't resist it. I said, well, let's go and do something about this. So I went in and we strafed. We went through and burnt several aeroplanes. One aircraft I shot at was a Savoia 79. It must have been full of ammunition because it blew up. And as I went through the blast, huge blast, my tail plane lifted up, and with a stick hard back, I was going straight towards the ground until I came out. I thought my tail had been blasted off, but I survived that. That was okay. So then we had a complete element of surprise. So not a shot had been fired, so I came back and we did a second run through. Normally you'd only do it once because more than that it could be dangerous, but this time I took a chance and went through the second time. This second time we had a few shots fired, but nothing much. But I had a new flight commander there who had been sent over to take over the squadron from me, a permanent officer. And he didn't know the danger. And he turned and to go in again. So I called up and I said, for goodness sake, don't do that. Stay away, come and join up. But he went in and 3 of my other pilots followed him. And it was inevitable. One of them was shot down, and the other one was hit in the air, and he went in flaming. He tried to land it instead of pulling up and bailing out, and he rolled the aircraft up. Of course, he was killed. And one of them went down a chap called Bailey, fairly near the aerodrome. So I I thought, well, we haven't been very nice to these people. They won't treat him very well. So I called up and asked him what the weather, what the terrain was like, so I could probably pick him up. He said, "No, don't." He said, "It's impossible down here, and there's no chance of you landing." But I found another spot about a couple of miles away, quite a good spot, and I landed. I was a bit wary about landing because I had holes through the top of my main planes where I'd gone through this bomb blast. And I thought if one of them hit a tyre, I'd be in great trouble. So I touched down very gingerly. If I'd realised that if I'd had a tyre flat, I would have taken off straight away without coming to a halt. In other words, while I could. However, everything was right, and I landed. I taxied in as far as I could to get towards him, and from a devious route. And then when I couldn't go any further, I stopped the motor, got out, and I had a long-range tank on, which was still half full of petrol. So I knew I'd have a very hard job getting off because there wasn't much room. So I dropped the tank, and I pulled it aside. And in those days, I was much stronger than I am now. But even then, it was a terrific effort pulling this half-full tank of petrol to one side, putting it out of the way. I waited till I was there probably the best part of an hour, and I was just saying out on my radio. I told the people circling overhead to stay. Anything that started coming out towards me to shoot it up. I thought they'd come out from the aerodrome. I was also expecting them to probably shoot at me, but evidently the guns were in a position where they could fire ground to air, but not along the ground, and probably they couldn't get a line on me. So luckily there were no shots. However, I was in a state of terror, thinking, "What the hell have I done this for?" and waited, and eventually he got to me, and he was panting and hot as blazes, of course, and so I threw my parachute out. He got in. I sat on his lap, and I only had a very short area to take off. I've forgotten the distance now. I think only 300 or 400 yards, which wasn't enough. I knew that. So I revved my motor up to full blast, standing on brakes, and put a little bit of flap down, which made me get off a bit earlier. And I took away we went. We hadn't reached flying speed when we came to the wadi ahead. We were flown into the air, and we hit the other side of the wadi with a hell of a thump. And one of my wheels, with all the dust, I saw one of the wheels bowling back behind me, my port wheel. And I thought, God, there's another wadi up ahead, and we looked like hitting it. And I thought, if we hit that, we're in trouble. So I dropped my right wheel. No, I didn't have a left one. And thinking, well, that might take the bounce. But I was very lucky. We cleared by a matter of inches, I suppose, and flew on. Now, the next thing, of course, I was worried about was whether we'd been there for a long while, whether the enemy would have aeroplanes there to greet us on the way home. And I thought, well, it won't be much fun if I have to go through a dogfight with this bloke sitting under my backside. So when I got to the aerodrome, we hadn't been picked up, luckily. When I got near the aerodrome, I called up firstly, I couldn't talk to this guy because the noise was terrific with the huge Allison motor in front. So I wrote on the map, I would like to try a one-wheel landing if this is okay with you. So he read it and nodded agreement. So I called up Wing, and I said, I'm coming in, crosswind. Please have an ambulance standing by in case anything goes wrong. And I was very fortunate. I could probably tried this 100 other times and never get away with it. But I landed on the one wheel with the wind from the port side. And as I lost speed, I deliberately kicked on a little bit of rudder to swing it to the port. So the weight of the aeroplane was thrown out all the way, and I almost came to complete stop before I came to rest. And we got out. The aeroplane was flying again 3 weeks later. I had saved the aeroplane, and we needed them desperately. They patched up a few holes in the wings and so on. Well, that was all that was about. Harry Broadhurst, the AOC, Harry Broadhurst, put me up for a major gong at that stage. They downgraded it to the DSO.
For this feat and other extraordinary acts, Bobby Gibbes was recommended for the Victoria Cross, but was downgraded to the Distinguished Service Order. Rex Bailey went on to win a Distinguished Flying Cross and Bar and became Commanding Officer of 3 Squadron in 1944.
On the last, I think December the 30th or the 31st, we went out on an armed reconnaissance with Danny Boardman leading. I was on his left. By this time I'd qualified to a leading aircraft, not lead the whole squadron, but to lead a 6 or to be at least be in front and have a number 2. One stage I had a flight lieutenant flying behind me as a number 2. We were attacked by 15 109s. Now this was most unusual, very unhealthy to have them in that number. And instead of their usual tactics of circling around and diving up from underneath, they came straight in and mixed it with us because they had us so outnumbered. We flew into a pattern where we were ready for our turnabout, and as they came into us, Danny called turnabout right, go, and I turned the wrong way, and to avoid the others I had to pull up, and I found myself right in amongst the 109s and turning in a battle with them. And after a couple of violent manoeuvres, I found myself in a circle chasing a 109. And he wasn't attempting to dive away, he was trying to turn inside me. And I was gaining in the deflection, and I just allowed on the gun sight that what I thought was the right deflection when the gun sight went out. Gun sight is a ring of light reflection on a glass little mirror in front of you. And if you've got your head to one side, too much to one side, the circle is not complete. So it makes you keep your head centred. And it's absolutely essential to have it. But every 4th round in our armament is a tracer. And I saw the tracer that I'd fired just go in front of his right main plane and just below the engine. So I kicked on a little bit of top rudder and fired another burst, and immediately glycol started to pour out behind him. I thought at first it might be their supercharger that they put in, and they just zoom up and away they go. We've got no chance of catching them. But he made no attempt to do that and half rolled out the other way. By this time I was getting up fairly close to him, gave him another good burst, and then black smoke started to pour out, and I saw a bit of flame in the engine. I knew that I had him. So I did the unforgivable, and that is I followed him down instead of keeping my altitude. But I did look around to see that I was not being followed by another 109, and I gained on him to about, I suppose, 2,000 feet. I gave him one last burst, and I saw the canopy fly off, and then some white, obviously maps, something come out of the cockpit, and then he bailed out, and the aircraft crashed. I was a bit tempted to go down and shoot him up because they'd been doing that to our chaps, but I was very glad I didn't because he was well inside our lines, and he was picked up shortly afterwards, apparently.
Well, it was on the last day of December 1942. It was the last flight by the Kitty Hawks. Bobby Gibbes was up with another 6, about 30 miles to the south of us, and I was in a 6 led by Danny Boardman. And I was number 2 to one of our better pilots who had to come back with engine trouble. So that left 5 of us. And we were attacked by 15 109s. Danny reported 12, but there were actually 15. Well, somebody reported them to Danny and he told us to climb. So we got altitude as quickly as we could. And I was attacked by 2 of them. They came down right through the middle of us first, split us up. I was attacked by 2 of them. I managed to avoid them, but in doing so I spun. I spun down from about 10,000 feet to about 1,500 feet. And I pulled out, and I was very fortunate because the normal thing was that they would have followed you down and picked you off. So I climbed back up, and I was attacked by 2 more virtually head-on attacks. But they must have been new pilots too, because they didn't seem to have very many clues. And I got a quick shot at one, and I don't know that I got any strikes on him, but I thought I may have. And anyway, they went. They disappeared, and I'm on my own. And I noticed up above me, about 1,000 feet up above me, was a 109 just looking at me, just casing me up, and probably trying to get into a position to attack me. And I was watching him, and obviously we were both oblivious to anybody else. If a 109 had come behind me, I would have been in trouble. But he didn't see Randall Watt coming in behind him, and Randall Watt just shot him, and he just exploded. And then Randall went off west. He'd seen another couple, and he got another probable. And I was on my own. I saw another aircraft to the east of me, and I thought it was a 109. I made my way over, and it was Danny Boardman coming home. So I thought, well, if the boss is going home, I'm going with him. And that's it, but everything had dispersed by that time. But that was a bit scary.
Thanks for watching part 4 of 3 Squadron in World War II. Be sure to tune into the next episode as we continue the story of 3 Squadron in the North African campaign.